All right, let's make better shaky text. And yes, I do have to say better shaky text because I've already made a video about shaky text. It was actually one of the first videos I created, and the backstory and the ramifications of this video would be super fun to talk about, especially on the analytics side, what it did for my channel, how it served to really give my channel a lot of traction, but that kind of has to be its own story. Maybe I'll come back to it, but all you need to know is that I showed off one major way to create shaky text of all different kinds in your scenes in DaVinci Resolve. Pretty powerful, pretty flexible, but I have since discovered that there is a significantly better way. So let's talk about that. We can get started right here in DaVinci Resolve on the edit page. I'm going to come to titles. I'm going to grab this text plus title and drag it right to my timeline. And we've talked about this a little before, but if you don't know, the text plus effect here is actually pulling in the full power of the text plus node from the Fusion page. So because of that, we can do some interesting things. So I'm going to open up my inspector over here in the corner to give us all of these different options. And I'm just going to change this to shake. And if you remember, or if you've seen the past video, what I did, I came over here to layout, and you can right click on center, and I went to modify with shake. We wanted shaky text, I want to shake. And then if you scrub, you see that this text shakes all around the screen. Now, like we said, this text plus effect is pulling in the power of the text plus node in the Fusion page, but to get full control over it, sometimes you will actually have to open up the Fusion page, especially in an instance like this where we used modifiers. So in that text plus effect, I'm going to click this button over here to open the Fusion page, and then you'll see this template node, which is this text plus node. But now you'll see over here in tools, we have all the tools we had access to on the edit page, but now you also have this modifiers button up here. And if you click that, you'll see the controls for the shake modifier we added. And it's pretty easy to see the limitation of this effect. If I wanted this shake to just be moving all around the screen like this, that's fine. You set a minimum and a maximum for whatever parameter you have added the shake to, and then it just shakes in between those two parameters. But let's say if I wanted this to be a really limited shake, you could pull down the minimum to like just below and just above 0.5, and then it would just be a small amount of shake. But because we have this modifier on the center parameter, I can't go back to that center parameter and move this anywhere else in my scene. And it's not possible for me by just setting this minimum and maximum to even position this in a certain other part of the screen. Even if I bring them both down or both up, you'll really only be moving it along this diagonal axis here. And if I wanted to change this position, I would actually have to add a transform node. And then in that node, you would have full control to move it anywhere else. And then it would be performing that same shake effect, but in a different part of the screen. There is a significantly better way. Here it is. I'm going to go back to the edit page. I'm actually going to just delete this text plus effect so we can start from scratch, bring in another, change this to shaky. And in layout, I'm going to right click again on center, but instead of shake, I'm going to click perturb. And then we're going to open back up the Fusion page to see those custom controls. Let me explain the big difference between the shake modifier and the perturb modifier. In the shake modifier, you give whatever parameter you have selected a minimum value and a maximum value, and it will naturally oscillate or shake in between those two. In the perturb modifier, it looks at whatever value you give it and modifies that up and down a certain amount with these custom controls. So by default, if I scrub, you'll see that this is just gliding around the screen. And here in the modifiers, I have controls for this position as well. So I can drag this anywhere I want on screen. You can even click, hold in the middle, shake it around like here. And then you have a few different options. If I pull down this X scale all the way and then browse, you'll see it is only going to be shaking up and down. And if you pull up the speed of this and down the wobble a little bit, you'll see it is much faster, but again, only on that up and down, that Y axis. If I pull back up that X, but down the Y, you'll see that it only shakes back and forth. So say we wanted a similar constrained shake like we built with the shake modifier. If I bring down this X in scale so that they're both just smaller, you see around 0.3, 0.5 both, you'll see that that is shaking in that limited area. But if we pull up the speed, up the wobble a little bit, you'll see that that starts getting much more frantic. But here's what you can do in the perturb modifier that you couldn't with the shake. We haven't actually keyframed or constricted any of these parameters. So I still have full control over this value, which is this position. I can bring this up into this corner, and now it does that same limited shake here, over here as well, same limited shake. And if you even go back to the edit page, if you come to your viewer and turn on Fusion Overlays, you'll have those same position controls where you can just move this anywhere else in the scene and it will be shaky in that section. And this is something you would need to go back to the Fusion page for, but because these are still independent variables, you can add further animation. If I go to the beginning of this scene, position this shaky text down in the corner, I can set a keyframe, scrub forward a little bit, move that up the screen, forward a little bit, move that to this far corner, and then to the end, down to this corner. Then that text will stay shaky, but as it's shaky, its general path is moving around the screen. And if I right clicked on that value to remove the path 1, to remove all that animation we've done so far, if I bring this back to the beginning of the screen, we could even right click that value and modify with another perturb modifier. So we have that smaller shake, but that second perturb is the default setting. So it's just moving around the screen. But now as that moves around the screen, it is also sort of internally shaking as it goes around the screen. And this isn't limited to just position. If I grab another text effect and I jump over to layout, rotation, I want to look at this Z rotation, this sort of classic 2D rotation. If I right click on that and go to modify with perturb, the default settings on rotation will be really subtle. Here's what you need to know about this. You're working with different variables that do very different things. For position, whatever your aspect ratio or resolution of your scene in Fusion is, the position for this corner down here will always be 0, 0. This corner will always be 1, 1. So the default perturb settings were shaking it all around the screen, but that was only barely going above 1. But if you know anything about rotation, you know that you are dealing with a full rotation of 360 degrees. So if we modify that rotation by only 1 or 2, that's going to be really subtle. So like we did before, we'll click this button to open the Fusion page. In our inspector, we can open perturb for this second one, and we are really going to pull up this strength. And now if we scrub, we'll see that it is starting to rotate a little more, but we can go all the way up to something crazy like 30. And you'll see that now we are getting a nice more rotation. Pull up the speed as well, and you'll see that now this is rotating sporadically. And as much as you want to ramp up this strength, you absolutely can. I could go to 360 and it would be rotating completely around, which doesn't look too great when it goes upside down. Let's take that back to 180, and now it is just going to be rotating sporadically on that. I pull down the wobble all the way. And if you'd like your general settings but want it to look a little different in any moment, you have a random seed setting here, which will just change how it acts out in that moment. And because this perturb action is a modifier, you can put this on almost any parameter. Here it is on size. And one more thing I want to address, we'll look at this new size shake here. Even on the edit page, if I come over here under title, under this text plus, over to settings, here we have motion blur controls. If I scale in and turn off these Fusion overlays, if I check motion blur, you'll see that instantly we get a little motion blur on that scale effect. And I like a quality starting at around 4. You'll see that smooth that a bit out. And now if we scrub through this, you'll see that you are getting some really nice motion blur as this text zips in and out closer to the camera. As you can see, this is a lot more flexible than that first shake modifier I recommended earlier. And one more tip, if you have a shake that you have built out and you especially like, maybe you want to reuse it several times in one video or even multiple videos, you can use the power bins. Let's look at this shake on the scale I created. I'm gonna come up here to view and make sure this show power bins is checked. Then that will appear over here in my media pool, and you can just go into master and see anything you've placed in there already. But here's what I can do. I can just come down to my timeline, grab this text plus effect and drag it back to that power bin, and you'll see it pops up here, text plus. And you could even rename this as scale shake. And then if you were working in any other project, you could grab that, drag it back to the timeline, and you would have that exact same shake. This could save an editor so much time if this is an effect that they wanted multiple times in their video. And I'm super happy to be pushing out this update to my earlier shake video that really, as I said earlier, did so much to give this channel traction early on. It's all very exciting, and I don't think I would be doing any of it if it hadn't been for the support I have received so far. So thank you all so much for supporting this channel. A great way, if you want to support the channel, is just to tell a friend, share a video that has been useful to you. Thanks, I'll see you next time.